2022. We are doing the seventh month of the 2022nd year after the birth of Christ. And so, if you are just joining us, thank you so much. Welcome on board. Welcome to this first segment of broadcast on Apex One Radio this day, Sunday. It's a beautiful Sunday here in the state of Ohio. The city of Columbus. We are broadcasting live from the United States of America. My name is ERNEST KANJO. Maxwell Agil is in Valsuch in Germany, controlling us digitally from that end. He is a producer of this segment of broadcast here on Apex One Radio. Once again, thank you so much. We're here on radio for a fresh edition of On Board with ERNEST KANJO. Today it's going to be a fantastic radio ride, and hopefully you're going to enjoy it by the time we get to our destination. Usually, we have interesting rides here on radio. The one today will be exceptional. Exceptional because we are bringing on board an exceptional passenger with an exceptional story. A story you won't afford to miss. A story which will stick on your mind forever. Once again, thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you find yourself across the globe. Welcome to this edition of On Board with ERNEST KANJO, which is about to begin now on Apex One Radio. So do not go away.
Hey friends, come to think of this, the world has become so competitive and giving birth to people we describe as movers and shakers. See how they excel in their craft and contribute to the development of their community and their society. Their stories are fascinating and inspiring. Their examples are worth emulating. Their successes are praised. Here comes a platform that tells those stories with the people behind them coming on board to do so. On Board with ERNEST KANJO is that journey which ferries you into the lives of Africa's illustrious sons and daughters, at home and in the diaspora. The one-on-one top profile interview is every week on Apex One Radio. On Board with ERNEST KANJO, be KANJO's next passenger.
Hello there and welcome. This is On Board with ERNEST KANJO. Now, there is no better experience in the history of humankind that beats that of Ferdinand Magellan. When in the 16th century, the Portuguese explorer sailed around the world, he had accomplished the biggest lesson ever. Sailing across the world simply replicates knowledge of the whole wide world. Magellan would have inspired hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of explorers across the world to either effect or want to venture into seeing the four corners of the world. And yes, that is the kind of inspiration, and why not motivation, anyone who desires knowledge should have. How many people have traveled across the world after Ferdinand Magellan? Perhaps countless. Of course, traveling across the world does not necessarily mean visiting every single country. However, just being to all seven continents is achieving that goal. And so, again, the best learning experience is traveling. There is little doubt about that. Traveling across the world as a hobby could be a very expensive venture, we would imagine. Yet, it is amazingly very rewarding. Better put, it is worth it. Now, Gwendoline Ashu lives her life traveling across the world, not necessarily for work, but because it is her hobby. She is on the road, she is in the skies, in the waters, discovering different parts of the world as she journeys across. What an exciting experience. Well, how much has she seen traveling across the world? What are the things she has heard as she goes on? What does she meet? Who does she meet as she makes these trips across the world? Where has she been so far? By the way, what motivates this traveler from moving and moving? At the verge of her 50th country, Gwendoline has decided to give us an avant-garde trip with Apex One Radio. We got the German-based traveler on board with Ernest KANJO to ride with us and do it in an exceptional way, this time on radio. And so she joins us on the show and boards the ride. Want to welcome you all to this edition of On Board to with Ernest Kanjo. It's Sunday, the 7th or 17th of July, 2022. Once again, thank you so much for choosing Apex One Radio. Maxwell Agilis, the locomotive engineer, ensuring that our 7 years old engine is working smoothly. Then our attendant on board is Grace Boise. Okon Equayo is taking care of the tickets, and I am the conductor. My name is Ernest Kanjo. Our main passenger, of course, as I've mentioned, is Gwendoline Ashu. She is a traveler par excellence. She's going across the world. She is on a journey. Well, let's join her to discover where she's been to, what she's seen, what she's heard. Once again, thank you so much as we now begin the ride. Berka Tobin, that beautiful piece of music titled Solitude. And today we are journeying on board with Ernest Kanjo with a very special passenger. A passenger indeed, a passenger par excellence because she spends her life traveling across the world, discovering the beauties of this world. Well, without much ado, let's invite our main passenger on board this great radio ride at exactly 23 minutes past 11, which should be 5:23 in Germany. Germany, from where she now joins us. Gwendoline, good morning, good afternoon. I should say good afternoon because it's afternoon out there. How are you today? Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you. The weather is so beautiful in Germany today, so I'm excited to be on the ride. I hope it's
S-
smooth.
Same thing, same thing. Yeah. So tell me, are you one of those people who, when they get up every morning, the next thing they're thinking is, which trip am I taking? Where am I going to?
Partly, yeah. So, because it's funny because many people think that traveling is all of my life. It's
Mhm,
just a part of it.
mhm,
And of course, I don't get up every morning thinking of where next to go.
mhm,
Some of the days I do, always
mhm,
looking for the next destination and the next offer.
mhm.
But then, yeah, it's not what I do every morning.
But this is really rare and strange because I live in a country where the people who are born in America, I mean, Native Americans, typical Americans, hate to travel.
Mhm.
Some have height phobia flying, some just have phobia for traveling generally. So I live in a city called Columbus. It's a wide, very big city, one of the biggest cities in the United States. This city is divided into four major parts. There is the east side of Columbus, the north side of Columbus, the west side, and of course the south side of Columbus. Now there are people who were born in the south of Columbus. They are in their 30s, their 40s. They haven't been to North Columbus simply because they hate to move. Where do you muster that courage to move around the place?
I think it's not a thing just about people from Columbus. I think it's a thing from people all over the world, especially as
Mhm,
Africans. I am an African,
mhm,
and I think that most of the people around me just always ask me like, where do I get this whole thing from?
mhm,
Many people think maybe it's because I came abroad. That's why I love traveling. But if I tell you my story, you would see that it's something that's always been a part of me, right
mhm,
back from home.
mhm,
I've always just been this curious person wanting to know what's on the other side of things, like what's on the
mhm,
other side of this place. Why are these people the way they are? What makes them them?
mhm,
You know, are they different from us or are they different from me, like from my race, from the people around me? And that's just what actually started this whole thing,
mhm,
because like my whole travel journey started when I was 13 years old,
mhm,
when I picked up my pen and wrote a letter to a German girl I'd never seen,
mhm,
and I wrote letters. We exchanged letters. Like she was my pen friend. We wrote
mhm,
letters for 5 years, you know, and
mhm,
not even meeting this person. But I just wanted to know a bit about where she's from, what Germany is about,
mhm.
what her family is about, what's going on in her mind, how is she thinking, like. And 5 years after that, I get to meet her at the Frankfurt airport.
Hmm.
So
Beautiful. I saw at the tender age of 13, she got inspired by traveling. And since then, it's been part of her. And she is one of the rare travelers you would find around because, in the midst of everything, she still travels. When they told me about you, I thought you're traveling because of work. I've worked with people, especially researchers, who spend their time traveling because you know, their jobs are sending them from one place to the other. But I'm told that you're a full time worker, yet traveling is a passion.
yeah.
It's a hobby, which also made it full time. We're going to find out more about that. But first, there are listeners and viewers who are coming across Gwendoline for the very first time. Maybe it will be important for us to establish um, the grounds for this journey by knowing you first. So, where were you born and where did you grow up?
Yeah, actually, I was born in Kumba, Cameroon. I grew up in
Okay.
Kumba. I spent most of my life while I was in Cameroon in Kumba.
Mhm.
I went to school in Kumba and I left Kumba for Germany. It's funny
Okay.
how while I was in Cameroon, I actually did not travel. I just stayed in one place.
Mhm. Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And so, tell us about some of those childhood memories you would always love to recall.
One of the most of it, like what I told you already before about, writing love letters to this girl
Mhm,
that I'd not seen before. Because I went to boarding school. So I went to
mhm,
BHS Kumba. It
mhm,
was then BSS because we're like the second batch.
mhm.
So I spent most of my time in boarding school.
Okay.
And when I get to come back home during the summer holidays, I didn't get to do much. I was more of a indoor kind of girl, you know.
Mhm,
I didn't go out so much. But when I was in school, that was where I had most of my experiences with friends. I had very close friends who are now, for example, very still close to me, even though I'm abroad.
right.
Um, so we started this whole thing. We belonged to this social club at school.
Mhm,
And then there was this teacher of ours, Mr. Samanba. He was so amazing. He brought these magazines to us.
mhm.
And in these magazines, we had seen these German pupils then who had written letters looking for pen friends.
Okay.
So my friend and I just asked ourselves, like, why don't we just try it? And it was just something we're trying about. And then
Mhm,
about 4 months later, we received the first reply from the German
right.
girls. And that was how it all started actually. And I kept writing letters to these people. There were like
Mhm.
three pen friends I had then. And I would write letters and wait for months. In those days it was almost
Right.
like 20
No
something
internet.
years ago. Yeah.
Mhm,
How difficult it was to get like with the postal services in Cameroon was really difficult.
mhm.
And I'll wait sometimes months and years. And most people in my school, if you ask them, I was always that girl who got letters from Germany, from a German
Wow.
girl, you know? So, and yeah, so those are some of the fun things that I actually did.
Mhm,
Yeah, I grew up in a loving
mhm,
family, and I have siblings as well. And we grew up being loved by our parents.
mhm,
And so there's just so much that I could tell about my childhood.
mhm.
But I think we don't have time for that.
Beautiful. Just quickly tell us about university education. What did you read in the university?
So I came to Germany quite young. I came to
Mhm,
Germany when I was 18, going on 19. So I'd had my my A levels in Cameroon.
mhm,
Started actually wanting to go to the university in Cameroon,
mhm,
but then I decided to go abroad to come meet my German friend.
mhm,
Wanted to meet each other, so we decided to come to Germany to visit her. The plan was not to stay in Germany, was just to visit her. But then when I came here, I decided to make a life for myself here.
Mm-hmm.
So after spending some time here, I decided to go to school and I went to study business. So I did international business for my bachelor's.
Right.
And then I also later on did my master's, and then I did an MBA
Mm-hmm.
as well. Yeah, so I did international business management.
Right.
So yeah,
One would have thought that you have also taken maybe some courses or had some formal education in tourism, something like that. Nothing?
nothing. I
Okay.
never did anything tourism actually. That's
Okay. Well, she's a living tourist and she tours the world. She's been traveling, and we're going to get more of her traveling experience on this radio journey on board with ERNEST KANJO, the edition of the 17th of July 2022. For those of you just joined us, thank you so much. Welcome on board. So you are a traveling person. You've told us how you got inspired. When we say traveling, what means of transportation do you use in traveling?
everything that exists.
Okay, from
So
walking,
I walk,
bicycle to riding. I don't know. Using a
fly.
taxi.
I
Okay,
go on the boats, water,
okay.
buses, flights, everything
Wow.
possible. Anything that takes me to my destination. I'm that traveler who doesn't mind the journey. I'm
Okay,
just excited about the destination. And there are
okay.
times which I've sat on the bus for 16 hours.
Good.
Actually, I went through Ohio when I was
Okay.
visiting the US. I consciously did not book
Wow.
flights within the US because I was so curious about this whole country that I decided
Mhm.
to take the Greyhound bus. I don't know if you know them.
Of course, yes. Of course, yes.
That was a
Which is
crazy
what a lot of people
experience.
dread. A lot of people dread it here because it's hours and hours of traveling on the road. Yep.
Yeah, I
Okay.
heard all those stories, but that's just the kind of a traveler I am. I
Hmm.
actually took the bus from New York, going through
Okay.
Indianapolis, and I went
Wow.
through to Ohio. I had a stop. We had a stop at Ohio. That's why when you mentioned it, I was like, "Ah, I remember that place. I didn't get to see it
Okay.
though, but it was so cool."
That's great. So, take us back to your traveling experience. Uh, when did you start traveling? Like, as a hobby. When did you hit the road and started traveling regularly?
Yeah, actually, when I left Cameroon, I think that was like the first time I actually traveled internationally.
Hmm.
So that was the first international travel I made.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, my flight was delayed,
Hmm.
and we got to Ethiopia because I was flying with Ethiopian Airways.
Hmm.
So we got to Addis Ababa quite late, and we had to stay in Addis Ababa for another almost 48 hours.
Wow.
And because of that, we were lodged in a hotel. So I just asked myself, like, why do I want to spend all this time at a hotel?
Hmm.
Just go around and see Addis Ababa.
Right.
And that was how I went out for the first day, saw a bit about this of the city,
Hmm.
came back, and then came to Germany. It was not much of the traveling though.
Hmm.
And then when I came to Germany, I was for the first years I was struggling to survive. So I didn't do a lot of traveling because I didn't have the means for it.
Hmm.
I did a couple of cities within Germany, but
Hmm.
then where I would board trains, we had this whole ticket thing called the beautiful weekend ticket. So it's called a
Right.
Schönes Ende ticket. It can take you all over Germany for a certain amount of money. So I would go for like hours to see the next city. So I'll
Hmm.
go like from Freiburg to Braunschweig. That's
Hmm.
about 14 hours on the train,
Wow.
changing like 14 times. And yeah, that was a travel I could afford then, you know.
Hmm.
But then um in 2012, I think then I'd finished my bachelor's, or I was almost finishing my bachelor's, and I got my first job.
Hmm.
So then I could afford it, and that was when I actively started traveling. So that's when I
Okay.
started visiting so many other countries
Hmm.
out of Germany. In the meantime, all those years from 2007 to 2012, when I was in Germany, I
Hmm.
did some countries, but it was not active traveling. So it was just mostly maybe if something took me there, like a seminar, or maybe like yeah, work, or maybe yeah, some holidays, but it was not really a lot. So
Hmm.
I went to Italy, for example, Austria, Switzerland, but then I wouldn't say I traveled there because it was just going to one place.
Hmm.
And then like what most of our African brothers do, you know, you just go visit a friend in that town and you say you've been to that place.
Right.
I don't consider that as traveling to that place. I consider that as visiting a friend, and that's like a thing you need to do.
Hmm.
But traveling for me is when you consciously decide that
Hmm.
I want to go and visit a place,
Hmm.
and not just the place, but I want to see the people, try the food, I
Mhm.
want to feel the vibe, go where the locals go, eat what the locals eat,
Right.
sometimes dress like they dress,
Mhm.
and just get to immerse yourself in the culture. That's for me, that's what I say you get a real travel experience.
I'm talking about taking that decision that you want to travel, visit people, discover new things. You do a lot of that. And we're told that you work full time, yet
Mhm.
you still travel a lot. How does this work? Because I would have imagined that you do a lot of these travels because of work, probably job oriented, but we told that these two are separate. So, how do you put these two together?
Actually, because it's something I love to do, I make time for it,
Okay.
you know, and I plan in my schedule. I work full time. I have a 9 to 5.
Hmm.
I'm a
Wow.
project manager, so I have a lot of responsibilities. But then I also make it a priority for me to do the thing I love to do, which is
Hmm.
traveling.
Hmm.
And so I plan it among like within my holidays.
Hmm.
Also one thing which I have to mention is that I'm really fortunate to be in a country which creates this work-life balance
Hmm.
because I have quite a number of holidays in a year.
Okay.
And because of that, and we have quite a number of bank holidays,
Hmm.
and so I always plan my trips surrounding this period so I get
Okay.
extra days.
Hmm.
And in a year, normally in Germany, you get approximately 6 weeks of vacation time.
Okay.
And if you count also the bank holidays we have, you could have up to 8 weeks of vacation time in a year. And if you
Wow.
plan them very well, you could see yourself having 2 months in a year where you get to
Mhm.
travel, you know. So
But have there been a time when you uh, perhaps took one of these leisure trips in the midst of work and probably carried work along with you?
I think it's been one time.
Okay.
One time during the pandemic, because the pandemic allowed it. I was
Hmm.
already working from home. And within that period, I was to go to Croatia.
Hmm.
Um, so I decided to take my laptop with me, but then it was just for like 2 days, and the rest of the time I didn't, because I always avoid taking work with me on vacation. Vacation for me
Right.
or traveling means traveling and not work,
Hmm.
you know. And it's come up so many times. People have asked me why I don't do a vlog like on YouTube. Why don't I do that? But I
That is
feel
a
like
question I asked behind the scenes prior to this interview. Hmm.
yeah.
Well, that's great. This is Apex One Radio. We are speaking with a traveler who has taken traveling as a hobby. She's been to, as we speak, 49 countries. We'll come back to that. Gwendoline Ashu is her name. She is our main passenger on board this great radio right on Apex One Radio. Gwendoline, you're going to take a very short break. Time
Mhm.
for us to ask a musician to accompany us on this radio journey, perhaps for some refreshment. Then we'll be back with you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. This is on board with NS Kanjo. We're going to listen to some music. I guess producer Maxwell Ajit is ready
Beautiful people,
for that.
it's
Then we'll be
Saturday.
right back with you.
Tu n'es pas le peuple, mon frère Macasto. N'exagère pas. Laisse-nous sort. Tu as eu l'argent, tu as fait rouler plein plein. Tu as fait all VIP. Tu as fait de là. Dès que tu es là, tu es parti à Barcelone. Regarde maintenant, il est fini comme les funérailles.
On est quand même la famille, non?
Voilà.
Sokoto, c'est à Conto, 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 Conto. Angelina, do me a bellefou, eh. Now you don't bellefou, eh. Ah bébé, je m'en fous, eh. Ah bébé, je m'en fous, eh. Now we Otina, Sokoto, Otina, Sokoto, Otina, Otina, Sokoto. Otina, Sokoto, allez Otina, Sokoto, Otina, Sokoto, Otina, Sokoto, Otina, Sokoto. I be say I love you so, but you tell me no, no, no. Make we go my bungalow, then we do re mi fa so. Baby oh, I go love you, make you no worry. Baby oh, if I give you belly, na me my gas. So baby give me that, bum bum, give me that, bum bum. Baby, give me that bum 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 bum. Give me that bum bum bum. Baby, give me that bum bum. Give me that bum bum. Baby, give me that bum 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 bum. Give me that bum 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 bum. Angelina, do me a telephone. Now you don't believe fool. Ah bébé je m'en fous. Ah bébé je m'en fous. Now we Otina, Sokoto. Otina, Sokoto. Otina, Otina, Sokoto. Otina, Sokoto. Allez Otina, Sokoto. Otina, Sokoto. Otina, Sokoto. Otina, Sokoto. Bébé fais-moi cadeau. Bébé donne-moi tout, vas-y. Bébé be my Belinda, oh. Bébé donne-moi tout, vas-y. Baby, oh, I could love you, make you no worry. Baby, oh, if I give you belly, now me my girl. So baby, give me that bum bum. Give me that bum bum. Baby, give me that bum 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 bum. Give me that bum bum bum. Baby, give me that bum bum. Give me that bum bum. Baby, give me that bum 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 bum. Give me that bum bum bum. Angelina, do me a telephone. Now you don't believe fool. Ah, baby, je m'en fous.
541 and for those of you just joining the radio right, this is on board with ERNEST KANJO. Our journey is just a couple of minutes old, yet running so smoothly with a traveler par excellence. Gwendoline Ashu is main passenger on the right today as we journey across. We don't know our destination yet. Is it going to be Europe, the United States, South America, or Asia? Well, that will be determined as we ride on the radio journey. This is on board with ERNEST KANJO. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Pass me the light.
Get on board, Auntie KANJO's next passenger. Our current passenger is Gwendoline Ashu. Gwendoline, welcome back.
Thank you.
Right. So let us look at some places you've visited so far. Tell us about the first country you visited when you were on your vacation on your leisure trip. What country was that?
That was Italy.
Italy. Now, tell us about this experience. You had not been to Italy before. You were going there for the first time. Did you have prior knowledge or maybe an idea of how the country looked like before going there?
I'm not quite. I actually just heard about it, and it was for me the safest choice because it was close.
Okay.
The flights were cheap.
Mhm,
I heard the people were nice.
mhm.
So I just thought, like, why not? I want to go to Italy. And that
Okay.
was how I booked my flights, went to Italy. And since then, Italy has been my favorite, like my favorite destination ever in
Mhm.
Europe, not in the world, but in Europe.
Okay.
So I go to Italy as many times as possible. There
Mhm.
was a time where I would just fly over to Italy for just a weekend to eat some pasta and get
Wow.
back home.
Okay.
So that's
So what
Italy.
takes you to Italy? The food, nature, or what?
Yeah. The food, the
Okay.
people, the vibe. The Italians are very loving. They're
Okay.
very sweet. They're people. They're welcoming. And
Mhm,
Italy is beautiful. The landscape, my God, it's wow. So much history, so much architecture. Like
mhm.
it's just everything in one package.
Right. We'll probably come back to Europe because that is where you reside and talk more about it. But I would like us to go back to Africa,
Mhm.
the continent of your birth. Uh, you would have certainly had some road trips, in some countries in Africa. When I say
Mhm.
road trips, you can start imagining what I mean. I know
Mhm.
there are road trips that I whole lot of experience difficult. Like I watched this series of documentaries called Deadliest Roads in the World, and I've watched some incredibly, uh, I mean, wonderful ones with some experiences which no human being would love to go through. But again, quite exciting. Have you had some of those terrible road experiences on the continent?
Unfortunately, not. I've been to Africa, and most of my road trips, I've traveled mostly Africa with buses.
Okay.
When I get to Africa, I mostly take buses or rent private drivers because flying within Africa is very unreliable and very expensive.
Hmm.
And for me, I love flying, but
Hmm.
for long haul distances. When I'm in a place I want to travel, like be on the ground, feel the place where I could just make a stop,
Okay.
see places, like see the locals, try foods. Like I don't know, when we're going in Cameroon, when you leave from one town, like when you leave from Kumba to Bamenda,
Hmm.
some of the best things like you meet on the road, like there's a Kem place where you have like having this roasted beef and all of that
Right.
stuff. You can only see that if you're traveling on the road. So I do a lot of road traveling when I'm so I fly into the country and then
Hmm.
I either get a private driver or I look for buses if it's
Hmm.
safe and I travel. And I've been very fortunate actually to have very good travel experiences with buses. In Morocco, I
Hmm.
flew into Agadir and then I went to the bus from Agadir to Marrakesh, and it was
Right.
really smooth, actually. Same thing with Tanzania as well,
Hmm.
and South Africa and Zimbabwe. Those are all places where I've traveled with the buses, so it's really been very convenient.
Wow. We will talk about East Africa in a little while because that's also a tourism haven on the continent. But I would like us to specifically talk about this city that is, is another. It has its own story. I'm talking about Lagos. Lagos alone is I don't know, maybe five small countries. Have you been to Lagos before?
Unfortunately, not yet. I'm still looking forward to it. It was
Okay.
on the plan to go last year,
Mhm,
but unfortunately, I didn't make it because of certain other commitments. But
mhm,
I'm looking forward to going next year. So if there's anyone listening who lives in Lagos, I look forward to meeting you when I come.
mhm. All right. Let's go back to East Africa. Kenya.
Yeah, Kenya is beautiful. Oh God,
Okay.
Kenya is beautiful.
All right. So, what caught your attention in Kenya? I've been there once, and one thing that caught my attention in Nairobi, I was in Nairobi for just 2 days, I guess,
Hmm.
was the traffic jam.
Hmm.
But what caught your attention in Kenya?
I think because I had a Kenyan friend when I started studying in Germany, and she
Hmm.
was such a sweetheart. And I just always thought, like, why not go see where she's from?
Hmm.
So I went to Nairobi. I also just visited Nairobi. I'm still planning to go back so I could visit the
Hmm.
Maasai, so do more of the country and also other places.
Right.
But it's just the people. For me, they are very nice and warm, and the women are amazing. Like there was this guy I met, Gladys.
Hmm.
We met on Instagram and we've been writing like to each other for so many years. And then I
Hmm.
got to go to Nairobi and met her. And she took all of her time to show me around. And it was just so amazing how this person whom I never met, but just
Wow.
through my travels, you
Hmm.
know, got to show me I ate the best food in Kenya. Oh my God. And it was so affordable. So yeah.
Hmm. That's interesting. Which other African capital cities have you been to?
So I've been to Johannesburg.
Okay.
I love South Africa. It's one of my favorite African countries.
Hmm.
Especially the Western Cape. So Cape Town is that
Hmm.
place which has my heart. Yeah, I've been to Marrakesh as well.
Hmm.
I've been to
Marrakesh
Dar
is Morocco.
is Morocco. Yeah, I've been to
Hmm.
Dar es Salaam. Now you're asking me the lots of them. I cannot even remember all of them.
Hmm.
Quite a number of them actually. I've been to Zimbabwe, Harare.
Hmm. I've been to
Uh,
Harare as well.
yeah, it's quite
Hmm.
busy, right?
Yep, very beautiful city. And I was in Harare for the Harare International Festival of Arts, Haifa.
Okay.
And what caught my attention was at that time, Zimbabwe was under this so-called embargo, where no country in the world collaborated with. That was in the days of Robert Mugabe. But when I got to Harare, I was surprised that with that politically ambiguous situation the country was going through with economic embargo and so on, Harare was still that beautiful and, you know, I mean, nice city. I was quite impressed. Okay,
Quite
and
expensive though. I don't know if you felt that, but it was
very
really
expensive, of
expensive.
course. Very expensive. Very expensive.
Yeah.
And tell me, when you get to these places, do you have like guides, people who move along with you and show you places? And do you also study maps before going to these places?
Who need maps in the age of Instagram and social media? You don't need.
Okay,
Anyways,
so you just
I
Google.
I use a couple of things. For me,
Okay.
before I actually get to a place, it's been a lot of work put in. So
Mhm.
I've done a lot of research. I
Okay.
don't just get up, buy a flight, and go somewhere.
Okay.
I have an itinerary planned already.
Hmm.
I always leave us true. I leave some room for flexibility and all of that stuff, but I always have like a plan.
Hmm.
I've done some research. I've learned some new words of the language spoken in that country. I
Okay.
have my currency in check. I have my to check how to get money and all this stuff. I have my safety, my health.
Wow.
It's a lot of work that goes into planning a trip.
I can imagine it's a whole project. For each trip is
Yes,
a project.
exactly. It
Mhm.
is. It is. And to make an experience exceptional, like I always tell Maxell, like the devil is in the detail,
Mhm.
like what makes your trip different from any other person who just books a holiday and go
Mhm.
is the amount of time and effort and research that you put into searching for it.
Mhm.
Not just going to a place, but looking for those places that the normal tourists won't go.
Mhm.
Do you know the best food that you eat is not in the restaurants in the city center, but it's in one street behind one house, behind somewhere hidden,
I can
where there's
imagine.
this woman that everyone
I can
knows she
imagine.
cooks great. That's the kind of places that I look for. And the
Mm.
food is always so good. I've become a foodie because of traveling as well.
Mhm.
When I was growing up, I was very picky with food. My mom knows me. I would not eat so many things. But so I started traveling, and that's one thing which also traveling teaches you
Mhm.
to open up, you know, to
Right.
new things. And I opened up to new food, and I started
Right.
testing different food. Sometimes, if you check my Instagram, you see I sometimes also try to cook them. So
Mhm.
I do like cooking classes when I go to a place,
Mhm.
try to learn how to cook the food. One I remember very well was when I was in Japan.
Mhm.
I went to this Japanese local. They invited me
Mhm.
to their home, and they taught me how to make a real Japanese matcha tea.
Wow.
And it was so, so good.
Wow.
Like, and since then, because I always got the tea and I made the matcha tea and it was okay, but then it was not exceptional.
Mhm.
And then they taught me about how to use matcha with dessert. So with
Mm.
ice cream. So I use matcha with ice cream. And since then, it's been one of my favorite desserts. So there are those small things that you learn when you go to where the locals are. And that's
Mhm.
one thing which I've learned from traveling.
Beautiful. We're speaking with a traveling professional. I should term you a professional in traveling simply, yeah, because like you said, um, you plan traveling, and I mean when I mean plan, I mean succinct planning,
Yes.
taking into consideration everything, including health and safety. Then that simply makes you a professional in this hobby. Thank you so much once again for joining us on this radio ride. Gwendoline Ashu is our main passenger on board, and you're listening to On Board with ERNEST. KANJO is exactly 7 minutes to 12 here in the studio of Apex 100. And if you're just joining us, welcome on board. This is On Board with ERNEST KANJO. On board with ERNEST KANJO. It's a radio ride that takes you to a destination which we would determine at the end of the day. Our guest is coincidentally a traveler herself. She's been to places around the world, and her journey across the world continues. We're told that she'll be hitting 50 soon. Well, we'll talk about that. Welcome back, Gwendoline.
Thank you.
Let us go back to Europe, where you reside, and we understand that this continent is so accessible. I know to move from maybe the United Kingdom to Belgium could just be a matter of a few hours. From
Mhm.
Belgium to France, maybe a few hours. When you go to the border cities, it can take less than an hour to cross from maybe Switzerland to some part of France, and so on. That makes Europe really, really accessible. Uh, do you take advantage of that and just crisscross the whole of that continent?
Exactly. Who wouldn't take an
Okay.
advantage of that? I do that, especially weekend trips. That's where I spend most of
Mhm.
like do weekend trips. And I'm one person who, when I do a like, because in every year I have like the long
Mhm.
holidays I plan, maybe two,
Mhm.
3 weeks. And then there are the short ones, which may be a couple of days, 3, 4 days, which are
Mhm.
surrounded around those bank holidays. And when I'm doing a long haul holiday, I don't do one country. I'm always a multiple country kind of girl.
Right.
So if I'm going somewhere, I'm looking at all the countries that are around there. Like the
Mm-hmm.
last year in the summer, I went to the southern part of Europe
Mm-hmm.
where I did Albania. I did all those former Yugoslavia countries like Albania,
Mm-hmm.
Montenegro, and Bosnia, like all of them surrounding. So I look at, like I said, I plan a lot ahead of time. Look at the map. Where
Mm-hmm.
this country located? How do I get there? What are the means
Mm-hmm.
of transportation? I use a lot of research. I use Google, use Instagram, use
Mm-hmm.
blogs. I read a lot of blogs. People write their stories online. I use Airbnb experiences. YouTube, a very good tool that I use
Mm-hmm.
as well, but then most of all Google, because it's like the central point which directs me to all these different places, and the more that I travel, the more I get to find easier and better means of searching, like apps and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Europe is very accessible to your question, and it's quite cheap traveling in Europe. Okay, except for the inflation now where you don't
Mm-hmm.
get cheap flights anymore. But before you could fly actually from one
Mm-hmm.
country to the next paying just a couple of euros. I've
Mm-hmm.
flown from Germany to Italy paying 15 euros with Ryanair. So
Wow.
that's almost nothing, right?
Right. Hmm. And Europe is, a great continent in terms historically. I happen to have studied European history in secondary school, and uh, there is Elysee, there is the London Bridge, the Reichstag in Germany, and what have you. But you who have had the opportunity of crisscrossing that continent, what would you pick out as one of the things which, if a first time visitor to Europe goes there, they should be looking for?
I think there is just so much to look for. In as much as most of Europe looks the same, like if you're in the western part, depending on what part you're visiting, right? Most of Europe looks the same, but
Mhm.
everything is different. Like the people are different. We are at the French borders, the Germany and French, but the moment you cross the border, you see the difference. The French are quite different from the Germans,
Mhm.
in the way they behave, in the way they interact with you, in the way that, you know, when you spend time with a German, you would know it. And when you go to Italy, for example, like it's
Right.
like you're leaving from this cold zone to a hot zone. Like the
Mhm.
people are so, and they calling you on the street, ciao Bella and stuff like that. So yeah, I think you just have to open your mind and open yourself to the experience and to people, because you never know what to expect from traveling. You know, for me, I've been very blessed that most of my travel experiences have been good. And that is where I come to the conclusion that most people in this world are good. But then at the same time, you never know what to expect, except you keep an open mind. So never be afraid to talk to a stranger, for example,
Mhm.
because you might just end up in their house for dinner. Never be
Right.
afraid to go somewhere. I remember my first ever experience where I went to Milan for the first time as a solo traveler, you know. And when I got to the Milan, I got to my hotel and I had breakfast that morning. And
Mhm.
then I was just so scared to go out of the hotel. But then I asked myself, like, will I pay my flight all the way from Germany, come to Milan just to stay in a hotel? Then something just told me, like, okay, just go to the city center, to the dome. So the dome of Milan is very beautiful.
Mhm.
And then I just took the tram. So that's like the metro. And I went to the Duomo. And then I stood there. And then someone just asked me from behind, like, do you mind if I take you a picture?
Mhm.
And then I turned and I looked at him and I was like, he's like, yeah. And then he did not only take me a picture, he
Mhm.
took me multiple pictures from different angles. And then I was so surprised at how willing and how happy he was to take my picture.
Right.
And from that day, I traveled to many countries, and many people are like, who always takes your picture? And I'm like, people. And they're so willing and so kind. And it's just to open up, just ask, and just talk to people. And that's how you get to explore, no matter the place, not just Europe, America, Asia, wherever you are. Just keep an open mind and be willing
Mhm.
to ask people things.
Right. And talking about American, you just mentioned earlier on that you've been to America as well, and even done multiple road trips, including going through the great old state of Ohio. When did you first come to the United States?
So it was in 2019. It was also
Oh,
the
okay.
year where I traveled the most. So I went to 14 countries in
In the United
2019.
States.
No, in 2019, I mean.
Oh, in 2019,
So,
14
so that
countries.
was the year I came to the US. Yes, I came to the
Mm.
US in May 2019 and I spent 4 weeks
Wow. That's
exploring a
interesting.
couple of places. Yeah.
When you were planning the US trip, what was on your mind? What were you imagining?
I was quite skeptical about the US. I have quite a number of family and friends in the US, but I was like I said, when I'm traveling, I don't go to visit friends. If they are there, good and fine, right?
Hmm.
But I'm going to see the country. So
Okay.
but I've heard so many things through the media about the stereotypes of America because
Hmm.
I was going to fly into Chicago
Okay.
and I heard all these terrible things with guns and stuff.
Hmm.
And yeah, it made me a bit skeptical, you know. So I was like, for example, like I had to book a flight that go to the US during the day
Hmm.
to make sure I get to my hotel before it gets dark. So such things, for example, right?
Right. Hmm.
But then I got to the US and I realized like it's like every other place in the world, right? There
Hmm.
are good things and there are bad things.
Hmm.
There are some rules that like travelers have to respect.
Hmm.
Especially if you're a solo traveler like me, I travel a lot alone,
Hmm.
but there are some rules you need to respect. You have to know that you cannot just go out in the night alone if you're in a strange country.
Right.
You have to know that wherever your hotel is located should be somewhere which is easily accessible.
Hmm.
You have to make sure that the people you know, like your loved ones, should have access to you at every time.
Right.
So you should always get a SIM card, very important, have access
Hmm.
to internet, make sure you can call someone if something is up. So those are the kind of things which are important. And it's not just in America, it's everywhere. And those are some of the things I was looking at. Another
Hmm.
thing was that I noticed that, or I had heard that America was very big.
Hmm.
So I was hoping to go through multiple states.
Hmm.
But then I realized that the inland flights were very expensive.
Very expensive indeed.
They were so expensive, comparative. I was
Hmm.
coming from Europe, you know what I mean? Like paying 15
Exactly.
euros with Ryanair to go to a
Exactly.
country
Hmm.
and then having to pay like $500
Hmm.
to fly with Delta from one state to another was like a lot of money,
And that was
you know.
then. Now you won't even find a flight I mean,
Wow.
as cheap as $500 to a state that is just maybe a couple of hours from yours.
Yeah.
Very expensive. Hmm.
So that was the thing, coupled with the fact that I also wanted to travel by road because America has one of the most beautiful
Road network.
landscapes I've
Right.
seen.
Hmm.
So it's like very beautiful, like how diverse it is, this country.
Hmm.
But then it was also about the cost for me. Like it was very expensive. So I had to
Hmm.
like combine, like, okay, the country's big, how do I travel? So I had to search at the bus possibilities. So I did a couple of bus trips, I did a couple of flights. So it balanced up the budget,
Hmm.
Yeah. And also another thing which which was very like predominant stereotype, the American people live unhealthy lives. But I was so surprised because most of the hotel and the restaurants I visited had really healthy options that I could eat.
Right.
I didn't always have to go to fast food. If I wanted to, I could do that, but I also found many healthy options as well.
Hmm.
So just to pick a few, there's so much I could tell you so much about my whole travel experience with in the US. But it
Hmm.
was altogether very good.
Let me narrow it down to maybe nightlife in Chicago, for instance. I've been to Chicago and I've experienced nightlife as well. How did you find Chicago at night?
Oh, I did. I just did 2 nights in
Okay.
the Chicago, or 2 nights where I went out,
Hmm.
not where I stayed. I was mostly in the hotels in the evening,
Hmm.
but 2 nights where I went out. There was one I went to the one jazz concert, and the other one we were just walking around. We had left dinner, so I met a friend as well in Chicago,
Hmm.
and then we were just walking around, looking. We're actually looking for a club to
Hmm.
go to. But then we couldn't find one that was appeasing to us. So we
Hmm.
ended up just walking around, just went to the same places we had gone to during the day, like we went to the bean
Hmm.
thing, the silver big thing. We
Right.
went around, just walked around beside the river and just went to the pier. That was also really, there was some fun activities there as well.
Hmm.
So for much of the nightlife, I can't really say. I did more of the nightlife when I was in DC.
Okay.
Because then I had family and friends who took me out to the club, to the
Right.
bars, and to stuff like that. But in
Hmm.
Chicago, I really just did 2 nights. There was one we did the jazz night, and then the other night we were just walking around
Hmm.
to experience Chicago by night. But I felt quite, yeah. I was afraid most of the time, but because I had a local with me, I felt a bit
Yeah,
safe. Yeah.
I do understand. I do understand your fears, and truly, even for people who've been in this country for so long, they're still very skeptical because you never know who is crazily using their so-called I don't know. They think everybody should own a gun, which is crazy. You definitely would have met a lot of Cameroonians in DC.
I think, yeah, my family, yeah. I met a lot of my
Mhm,
family members. And the nights we went to the club, I don't think they were just Cameroonians, they were Africans there. So I can't really say they were just
mhm,
Cameroonians.
mhm,
But like I said, when I travel, I visited some few friends and families as well. But my main goal was not to visit family and friends, was to go. So I had to go to places. I went to the White House,
mhm.
I went to the Congress. So I visited lots of iconic places
Right.
in in the US.
Mhm,
Like when I was in DC, I went to Washington, visited some places and stuff like that. So like also, so it's mostly important for me not just to visit people.
mhm.
It was the first time in the US anyway, so I had to visit some family and friends. But most of my trips was to do some of the touristic things that I went there to do. So
Right. I'm talking about the broader Americas, like South America, those other just other places. Did you have you had an opportunity of doing some of those trips in South America?
I haven't visited South America quite. The only place I've been to in the Caribbean is the Dominican Republic.
Okay.
Yeah, I went there for about, it was about a week. Yeah, but I really have that. That's still on my to-do list to see
Mhm,
more of South America. I've done mostly Europe. I've done some countries in Africa, a lot of Asia.
mhm,
Europe quite a lot as well. America, yeah, the US and yeah, the Dominican Republic. I'm still to go to Canada, so
mhm,
it's still on my to-do list as well. Yeah, so I haven't visited like all the Mexico and all the other places now, not yet.
mhm. Well, like you said, scores of other places on her to-do list. She is a traveler. That's what she does, and she's definitely going to cover more grounds in this great hobby, which, of course, is not given to everybody. You must be a lover of traveling to do what Gwendoline does. She is our main passenger on board this radio ride. If you are just joining us, thank you so much, and welcome to this July the 17th edition of On Board with ERNEST KANJO. We're broadcasting live from the United States of America, and the journey continues. Let us talk about food, what you eat when you when you're going along. Do you have you made it maybe a conscious decision that wherever I go to, I must taste what they eat there?
Yeah,
Okay, and
it's never
you
complete
definitely would
without
have
that.
then you definitely would have eaten all sorts of things.
Not all, some.
When I say
That,
all, well, maybe figuratively, I mean you've just eaten so many kinds of
yeah, I've
food.
tried quite a number of
Hmm.
stuff. Like I just love it, and food is good. If you're a foodie like me, right,
Hmm.
you want to try it. It's not everything, of course, that you like. To be sincere, it's not everything I
Hmm.
liked, but there's some
Hmm.
things that I just like said, oh, I tried this in my life, and that's okay. But there are
Tell us
some
about
things that,
tell us about that one which you tried and you would want to eat it over and over and over and over.
oh, there are quite a lot.
Okay.
There was this one called, I think I was when I went to Greece. It's called, I think, moussaka or something. It's some kind of it's like lasagna. I don't know if you know lasagna from Italy,
Hmm.
right? I love Italian food, so I cook Italian food every day. Even today, my dinner is pasta. So, but it was really good. It was really good, and also like the pierogies when I went to Poland last year.
Right.
Pierogies were so good. The vegetarian ones, not the ones with the beef in it. It was really, really delicious. That's
Hmm.
something that I would also really want. Like I said, there's just so much food. I can Right now when you ask me, I can't even think of it because it's quite a lot of it. But those are the two that stood out for me at the moment that I think about it.
Hmm.
Oh,
And
another one was in Bosnia Herzegovina. So I tried the
okay.
national plate. The national plate is made up of a lot of different kind of food,
Hmm.
and lots of stuff like there are meatballs. There was some delicious, delicious, delicious. I can't even explain that.
Hmm.
But yeah, those are the few that I remember.
But before we get there, how do you get to identify these foods? Do you like you just present a menu and you pick? And I understand um, you probably pick, some food which you've never seen, you've never heard about, you've never tasted. So how do you make that decision to like when you have a menu presented to you?
When I go there, I always ask the local. Like, I have this question that most of my friends can identify me with. Like,
Hmm.
what would you? So I always ask like the waiter or whoever it is, like, what is it you're going to eat, or what's your favorite, or
Okay.
what's the homemade recipe? So those
Right.
are the questions I always ask, and they would like start recommending me stuff. Then I'm
Hmm.
always like, which one are you going to eat?
Hmm.
And then they will tell me. And most of the times, it's always been the best, actually. So that's what I do. I do some research beforehand, actually. Like I said, I check
Okay.
what kind of food, what is the national dish, what do people in this place eat. But
Hmm.
then when I get to a restaurant, I always ask the waiter, they have the secrets. Ask them because they know the food
Right.
that the chef cooks the best.
Hmm. But Gwendoline, food is very cultural. It's a cultural thing, and you come from a continent that is so particular about this. Talking about the
Mhm.
meats, for instance, it is not everything which every African eats, probably because of some, customs, traditions, and all of that. So, tell me, how do you guard against this when you're traveling across the world?
The world is a global village, and
Okay.
it's so accommodating to every culture, every religion, everything that you can imagine. So most of the times you just have to ask. And sometimes even the restaurants offer it to you and they tell you that people also will like not just about the cultural restrictions, like for
Mhm.
example, people who don't eat pork, those who don't eat
Right.
like yeah, whatever, right?
Mm.
Beef or whatever. But then there are also people who have allergies. So people who don't eat
Yeah.
nuts, who don't
Right.
eat other stuff. So the most of the world is adapting their food to these things. So you see different variations.
Mhm.
The cool thing about Japan is that you even get to see pictures. Like they would have this display of the food in a
Okay.
picture, and you can see because sometimes like you cannot even imagine what this thing is,
Mm.
right? It's feel like you like you're in a country like Japan with a very like with very difficult language from my perspective, right?
Mhm.
Um, you just get to see the picture and then you can identify, oh, okay, I see there's egg in here. Oh, okay,
Mhm.
there's some vegetables in here. Okay, I want this one, right?
Mhm. Right.
And maybe if you're lucky, the food is good. If you're not, then try another thing.
There is also this daring perspective of it. There are some people who dare, like whatever thing they see, they try it. I have people who have told me that they can eat anything edible. I'll take it back to a couple of maybe when there was this COVID uh, 19 outbreak. There was a
Mm-hmm.
lot about what Chinese eat, and there was suspicion around this that the virus might have emerged from people eating all sorts of things. And we've seen videos of Chinese eating really horrible, horrible things. Have you had that experience before? If you've been to that part of the world,
Actually, people eat all kind of stuff, and
yeah,
it's I won't
I've
say
seen
it's
people eating
terrible.
scorpions. People eating scorpions, and
Yes, I tried
yeah,
it when I was in Thailand. Actually, have
see,
you have you ate the mupani worms? I ate them
mm,
in Zimbabwe. So
worms.
I won't say they are terrible because that's what we would make it feel like,
Okay,
and we would criticize something we have no
I've seen
idea
people
about.
eating. I've seen people eating cockroaches as well.
Exactly, and the,
Okay.
the, I was served a crocodile in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
In this local restaurant I went to called the Boma.
Mhm.
You can eat elephant meat there. You can eat different kinds of meat. Um, and I won't criticize people's food when I have no idea about. It's just like if you tell someone like, oh, like eat arrow, they'll be like, what is arrow?
Right.
So you can't criticize it until you've tried it. And like you could be so positively surprised.
Mhm.
We're visiting this night market in Thailand, in Bangkok,
Mhm.
and there were all this street food, like different kinds of street food. You can try lizards and like like everything you can imagine, actually, you know. And some will offer you to try it, and sometimes you try it, and then you'll be like, "Oh, okay, it doesn't taste that bad," you
Mhm.
know. So the fact that you didn't grow up eating it doesn't mean make it bad, and that's the one thing. And we criticize people sometimes because of what they eat,
Mhm.
but you have no idea about it. Maybe if you actually try it, you would like it.
Right. We're speaking with a traveler par excellence, Gwendoline Ashu is her name. She's our main passenger on board this radio ride, which is gradually but steadily moving to its destination. I'm talking about fashion. Do you get to wear whatever you find on your way?
Oh, not everything though.
Okay.
It's true. Like I said, the world is a global village now. People are more liberal, especially when you go to like most of these Muslim countries. Like
Mhm,
when you're in the UAE, for example, in Dubai, people are very liberal. You can wear anything you want. But at the same time, there are places you can't go when you're not properly dressed.
mhm,
You can't go to the mosque, for example, wearing some like hot pants and belly tops and stuff
mhm,
like that. So you have to always respect culture and
mhm.
people,
Right.
right? Just like you expect this respect in return,
Mhm,
you know. So you always have to be appropriately dressed. Like I said, you do a lot of research. It's a lot
mhm,
of stuff to do. So you have to read, what do people wear, what is appropriate. And the
mhm,
places you go there, you have to cover your hair, for example. The places you have to go where you don't wear a dress which is above your knee. There are places where you have to completely wear a dress like right to the floor, like really something long,
mhm.
you know, cover your hands and your arms, and you have to respect the culture. That's very important,
Right.
because just imagine that if you were someone was coming to your own space, to your own home, or your country, and disrespecting everything you are doing, how would you feel like? And the one thing I love about trying cultural things is that it gives me a feel of trying to be in these people's shoes. Like there was this time I tried this abaya. This Muslims women
Right.
wear black, and they
Abaya.
put
Yeah.
this cover their mouths and their head and everything. And I'm always curious, like, how do these people eat?
Mhm,
How they hot in those things, you know? And I'll judge them. But then when I went to the UAE, I tried that on, and it was so comfortable.
mhm,
I know since then it changed my whole perspective about it. And I
mhm,
I get to respect the women who get to wear that. Even in the heat, like for the 40 plus degrees centigrades, how hot it gets in Dubai sometimes, or in the
mhm,
UAE in general. Like it is just so amazing to see like how these people in their culture and how proud they are of it. Most
mhm.
of us Africans, for example, we've lost our cultural backgrounds. Like we don't even get to wear our cultural outfits, but yet we criticize people who wear theirs.
Now, quick question. We cannot do this show without talking about what is being described today as the cultural haven of the world, Dubai. All roads now lead to Dubai. What are people going to Dubai to look for?
Everything. There's everything in Dubai. I've been to
Okay.
Dubai, I think, more than 3 times.
Hmm.
It's beautiful. Like, it's just to see the power. For me, it's okay. One thing I can say is just the power of what innovation and the human mind can do. If you
Mhm,
look back at the history of Dubai, like where it came from the desert, and what it is today, it is
mhm,
incredible. You know, let's keep all the stereotypes aside,
mm.
what we think we know, because most of the things are stereotypes.
Right.
And that's the one thing that traveling teaches you. Never judge a book by its
Mhm,
cover,
mhm,
because we would sit here and judge and claim and talk about all the things we think a place or people are, but we
mhm,
have no clue of who they are
mhm,
until you actually get to experience them. Dubai is beautiful. I go there every chance I get, like because it's a place where when I just want to go out of my reality,
mhm,
and get some luxury, in Dubai you can get anything you want so long
mhm,
as you have money. But it's also so amazing to see the contrast between all that wealth and
mhm,
also the people who are struggling,
mhm.
you know, like the workers, the immigrant workers and stuff like that.
Right.
But it's a beautiful place to go. It's good for investments as well. You can buy beautiful apartments there. It's
Mhm,
good for tourism. There's everything. Tourism, not just for single travelers. There's tourism for families, tourism for couples. It's a place for everyone. And I
mhm.
understand why it's like skyrocketed in all these years.
We're speaking with traveler and getting first-hand experience from someone who has experienced the world. And like she mentioned, traveling is the number one experience. And I know one of the experiences you've had traveling is encountering people with different habits, different values. Have you ever been to somewhere, for instance, and you greeted people and they did not respond to you? Just tell us about some of the kind of habits, strange habits you've come across while on the road.
Quite a lot. When I went to Morocco, for example, right? Let me start with Tanzania.
Mhm,
Tanzania, I met these Maasai guys. They were so incredible. Oh my God. When I went there before, I was not quite sure if I should greet them, hug them, bow down, whatever thing, you don't know how to greet them. So it was a
Right.
bit weird when I met them the first day because they were like in front of the resort I was staying at.
Mhm.
And then the next day when I went, and there was one of the men was like, "Hey, sister." And I looked at him and I was like, "Hi, brother."
Mhm.
And then he was like, "Come with me." So he took me and he
Okay.
went to where they had their shops, you
Okay.
know. And I was not sure how to greet him. But then he was like holding me and giving me gifts and wearing
Mhm.
the gifts on me, like, really putting his bangles on my feet and giving me gifts on my hands, holding me. I was so impressed because I always thought these Maasai men were very reserved,
Mhm.
you know. And those are the kind of things. So I always try to meet the locals, experience them, and make my own picture for myself.
Right.
When I went to Morocco, for example, in the bus where I was going from Agadir to Marrakesh, I met a guy. He was from one of these Berber villages, you know, and he told me like, "Hey, if you have time tomorrow, I'll take you to my family." And then he took me and we did camel riding and I wore their outfits
Mhm.
and we went to his village. He showed me right in the heart of the desert, ate
Right.
food. His mother cooked for me. And I thought that as a Muslim, I could
Mhm.
not go to these people just the way I was dressed.
Mhm.
But just like I wanted to eat and I prayed and they
Right.
all were silent and let me pray.
Okay.
So they respected my own beliefs as a
Mhm.
Christian. So I just believe if this respecting is reciprocal, right? If I give
Mhm.
it to you, you give it to me. If I so yeah.
Beautiful. Gang Noela Echik is in the United Arab Emirates. She is our fervent follower here on Apex One Radio. She has a question which I'll put to our main passenger on board just right ahead. But before we come to that, uh, Gwen, let's get into something very concrete. You don't
Okay.
use stones to travel. You use money, and when I advertise this show, there's this listener, Favor Grace Nganjem, who said I should find out from you who funds these trips.
Oh, if I tell you the stories that I've heard because people see me traveling,
Mm,
you would be so you would laugh a lot. I do fund every trip I've been on. I don't get funds from anywhere. I have
mhm,
okay, like I said, I work a 9 to 5 job. I have a good
mhm,
job. I have a good salary. That's
mhm.
one benefit. But at the same time, I also plan. Like
Okay.
it's a lot of planning that goes into traveling.
Mhm,
So just like people set aside budget to do things, I set
okay.
aside budget to travel. So it's very intentional for me.
Right.
So every month I have amount of money that I put aside for my
Mhm.
travel purpose. You
I
know.
don't want us to. I don't want us to mention figures.
No, of
Uh,
course not. I'm not even mentioning figures because it's not
right.
variable.
Yeah. And I can imagine, even without mentioning figures, I can imagine how expensive it could be because if you have to leave Germany and live in the United States of America for 4 weeks,
Not
knowing how
necessarily though.
expensive, knowing how expensive the United States is, then I can begin to imagine some some figures. What is the furthest distance you've gone away from home?
I would say Japan.
Japan. Okay, that's like 18 hours from home.
I did, yeah, approximately 18 hours because I did a layover in Dubai. I flew to Dubai and then from Dubai to Tokyo, I did 10 hours, 30 minutes.
Mhm,
So from Germany to Dubai, it's about approximately 6 hours, 7 hours. Then I
mhm.
did 10 hours, 30 minutes to Tokyo.
Okay, for someone like you who has been on the road, traveling across the world and experiencing things, you definitely would have experienced something which, in the next, I don't know how many years, you will never forget.
There are so many of them. I can't even begin to explain them to you.
Okay.
I started traveling because I wanted to see the world, but
Mhm,
also sometimes it was for me because I wanted to escape life.
mhm.
But I realized that I was actually living life
Okay. And
by the things I get to see.
you're probably moving towards life.
Yes, the things I get to see, the
Mhm.
places I get to be in, the experiences. It
Okay.
is unforgettable. I tell you, you
Uh-huh.
know, when I feel low, I sometimes go back to the pictures. I have thousands of pictures because I take quite a lot also.
Mhm.
Um, and I get to see those things and remember those experiences and those wonderful people I've met. I remember that I was in the Dominican Republic and I went to this tea farm where there was this woman who showed me how to make chocolate. She was so kind and so warm that every time I remember her smile, I just get to smile as well,
Wow.
you know. So that's how much that you get to gain from traveling.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much about, I don't know how to start telling you this, but I get so emotional whenever I get to talk about this because it's just a lot of stuff. You know,
I
from
know.
the time where people make you feel like, wow, like the places I go where many Black women don't travel, especially traveling alone, and people get to make you feel like, where are you from? Like they want to touch your skin and feel you and like, who are you? Where are you from? And stuff like that. And it's just incredible.
Right.
And the things you get to see, this world is beautiful, I tell you. Like sometimes I be in a place and I'm look at it and I'm like, how did God create this place? You know, so incredibly beautiful. Like nature, how nature brings things out of perspective, and you're just like, you know, just like recently I was in Zimbabwe where I went to, you know, to visit one of the national parks to see how the stones were formed naturally
Right.
by nature. And you look at that and you're asking, how is that even possible? You know, so yeah.
Have you ever bumped into maybe some celebrity? I know you're traveling a lot. You might have met some Beyonce, some Jay-Z at some airport or somewhere around the world. Have you had that experience before?
Not celebrities. I've met quite a lot of prominent people who are not celebrities. I've met quite a lot of business people in high-ranking places. Especially when I flew business class, there you meet a lot of people. I've also met a lot of very wealthy people. I met a rugby star in the flight. Yeah, but not celebrities. I think most of them fly private jets, and so you don't really get to meet them at airports. But for like business people, because I'm also someone who's very open, so I get to talk to people. And if you're sitting beside me on a flight, no, I'm going to talk to you. I know everything about you. So
Right.
yeah. So I've met quite a lot of people. There's some people I'm still in touch with who have really also helped me career-wise because I met them on a flight. You know, so
We also have countries that have had a history of war, disease, famine. You know, some difficult things. Have you deliberately visited some of those kind of places?
deliberately I would say no. But sometimes when you go somewhere there's an outbreak, you just have to be careful. Like I remember when I went to Thailand for the first time, there was the floods. But then I was fortunate not to be in the area, and I was panicking as well because I didn't know if it was going to come to where I was.
Right.
And then I had to take an early flight back home. But then, like I said, you never know. Or when I was in Japan, for example, there was an earthquake. It was I think a magnitude of 6.3, really strong earthquake. You know, I woke up in the night and I was like, what's happening? Something is turning, something is shaking. I was so frightened. And then, but then the next day, I read the news and it was an earthquake. And then I was just like, how do people get to live here? But people get to live in Japan all their lives. So yeah, those things do happen. But like I said, we are human beings and we live in a world which is prone to unpredictable things. I think that's one thing COVID has taught us. So
Right.
don't stop living your life because you're afraid of what you think could happen. You never know.
Which is the most expensive country you've been to?
I would say Zimbabwe.
Right.
So,
All right. That's
Dubai,
interesting. And
Dubai is also expensive, but Dubai is expensive by choice. So
okay.
you can still have a very cheap, affordable life in Zimbabwe if you want in Dubai, but or UAE, let's say, so not Dubai. Dubai is still a state in the UAE. But Zimbabwe, ooh, the dollar, the value of the dollar, it's really abused, I would say. To get it, it's very difficult and it's very much expensive.
And what about traveling modalities? Is it easy for you to get visas to all the places you're going to?
When I was traveling with my Cameroonian passport, it was a bit challenging. But do you know there are about 13 plus countries? What am I saying? 13, 33 countries where Cameroonians can go without a visa.
I never knew
So
that.
places like the Maldives. Oh my! I think my battery is running low. You just have to give me a second so I try to get my charger. So yeah, like the Maldives, for example, it's a place where Cameroonians could go without a visa.
Right.
Definitely. Like Singapore, also is another place where Cameroonians can go without a visa. You know, Turkish is now offering the e-visa possibilities. So Yeah, those are all the things. But now I have a German passport, so it's quite easy for me to travel because Germans
Mhm,
can go to a whole lot of countries in the world without a visa. So give me a second, please. I need to put my phone
mhm.
on charge.
This is Apex One Radio. This is on board with Ernest Kanjo. We are gradually but steadily moving to our final destination. But before we take our last stretch of our radio journey, we'll be right back with you.
Come back here. Come back. I'll give you money. Bye bye.
Leonetta, that's my name. For
Another piece of music is titled Mimi. Mimi by Leonette Aye, Apex One Radio. Thank you so much for the audience and this is on board with Ernest This is on board with Ernest Kanjo. Our little journey continues as we rattle towards our destination. And if you are just joining us, thank you so much. And welcome to those of you just joining us at oneradio.com. And those of you joining us on Facebook as well, we want to say thank you so much. Our guest is traveler par excellence. She's been to many parts of the world, and we are currently enjoying her story. We will be arriving at our destination shortly. She now joins us once again. Welcome back, Gwendoline.
Thank you.
Right. So we mentioned that before, but I don't know if we should talk about it again. There are some dangerous trips which a lot of Africans make nowadays. Some of them trying to come abroad, and having to go through jungles for so many days. Uh, any idea about that? Have you ventured something like that? If so, tell us about some of the dangerous places you've been to.
Um, um, I would say I've not ventured on something like that, and I would not recommend people to risk their lives. But I also fully share the understanding why they would do that. But I always want to just advise that people should inform themselves before they go somewhere. Not
Mhm,
someone just come and tell you there's this possibility out there. You can go to the US through the Darien Gap or through the jungle or whatever, and you
mhm,
carry yourself without actually knowing what you're actually going to do. The good thing is that nowadays there's everything online. There's YouTube resources where you can see people who've made this experience before.
mhm,
There's Google search. Please inform your loved ones, inform yourself before you even go to any country, not just the risky ones. Even you're going to
mhm,
the next country, please inform yourself. It's very important because you don't want to go to a place and then you're surprised about what you get to meet there. Because that's what will make
mhm.
the experience for you very enjoyable.
Right. Have you made some lifetime friends on the road?
Oh yeah. If you look at my phone book, you're going to be so amazed. Like It's a lot of adding to countries and cities. Like, okay, my personal driver in Joburg, my cook in days. Like, I have some of the closest friends to me all over the world through travel. I've made amazing people. I've met people who are still impacting my life to this very day because of travel. I met people who I have very close relationships with. That if something important were to happen in my life today, they would be a part of it because of travel. So I'm grateful for that.
And have you taught people about where you come from as you journey along? Do people always want to find out about your own background?
Yeah, it's always an exchange. Like I said, you should also be willing to share because no one is going to be. Imagine a conversation. If you were talking to me right now and I was just looking at you and sitting quiet, how would that go? So it's always like an exchange process. People want to know about you as much as you also want to know about them. Like if I travel a lot solo, like I've mentioned quite a number of times. And I think I would encourage people to do that as well. When I go to a hotel, for example, I get up in the morning and I have to go for breakfast. For example, as a solo traveler, I won't sit alone, even though I'm a solo traveler. I'll look for the next table where the next group of people are sitting.
Right.
And I could just start by complimenting what they're wearing. And that's how a conversation starts. And by the end of the day, we are doing stuff together and I'm no longer solo.
Gwendoline, tell us how the day before your trip would look like.
Oh, the day before my trip. I think I would mostly do my beauty stuff. Like maybe I'll do manicures, pedicures, my hair and stuff like that because I want to avoid spending time when I travel to do stuff like that. So, but I usually pack way before my trip. So packing is not part of the things I'll do the day before my travel. And what I also do maybe is just to check again, even though I'd packed it already, like my travel documents, my health insurance, my safety stuff. Because I travel my paper spray, for example, and so many other stuff that I need on the trip. So yeah, I just do checks again, and then I do mostly beauty stuff. And in the evening, I'm already chill. If I'm doing a long haul flight, I make sure that I get enough rest, so I'm not so grumpy during the flight.
I know people who travel a lot, like we've always said, experience a lot, including different weather conditions, different climatic conditions. Tell us about some of the extreme climatic conditions you've experienced while traveling.
I'll just say the recent one, which I remember when I went to Tanzania. I was taking the ferry from Zanzibar back to Dar es Salaam, where my flight was leaving to Zimbabwe. And it had rained a lot. So I saw the ferry was so bumpy. It was so bumpy, and people were just puking everywhere, like in the ferry. For people who have seasickness, and it was so scary because people were not comfortable, and you could just see all the whole things going around, and it was not quite comfortable. I'd say it was not risky, but it was not comfortable. And when you see things like that, it makes you also uncomfortable. I've also been in a very, very difficult flight. It was quite bumpy. We're about descending, and all of a sudden the pilot had to take off again. So that was quite scary. But then apart from that, I haven't really been. Oh, okay. In the US, our boss, the boss I took from New York to Indianapolis, actually had some technical breakdown. And in the middle of nowhere, there was no bus and it was raining. And before the Greyhound company could cover a replacement, it took us almost 4 hours. So a trip that was supposed to take about 18 hours ended up taking 24 hours. So I got to Indianapolis with swollen legs, but I was the most happiest person ever.
Right. What are some of the tools you take along? Notebook, camera?
Yeah, of course. I take my camera, my phone. I don't take a lot of gadgets because I try to limit the amount of things I carry. Okay. So I get a very good phone, which makes great pictures, great content, enough space. So I always carry an extra SD card in case I need it. So I take a tripod with me if I need it, but I rarely use a tripod because I don't make content for anyone. I do it for myself. The moment travel becomes a chore, it's no longer enjoyable for me. So I don't want to put myself in a place where I feel pressure to do what people expect me to do. So I do what I want to do, how I want to do it. If I go somewhere and I see something I like, I stay there, spend times. There are times where I've just been on the beach and just watched the sunset for hours and do nothing. So I don't take a lot of stuff. My phone, I take my yeah, my travel documents.
Mhm,
Most importantly, I take my medications, first aid. Make sure that I
mhm,
always have medicines for stuff like I have for maybe acute diarrhea, for
mhm,
stomach upset, reflux, just like the basic things for a fever, for a headache, for maybe sunburn, some
mhm,
wounds, stuff like that. I always carry the emergency stuff. But like I said, I also make sure that I know where the next possible hospital is, if
mhm.
my insurance would permit me to visit the hospital, and if I need additional coverage on that. So
Mhm.
very important. Yeah, apart from that, I take the normal stuff like my clothes. I take yeah, my travel documents, very essential. And yeah, gifts sometimes because I don't know who I meet. Sometimes I meet people that I want to gift
Right.
something to them.
Mhm. We're speaking with someone who has first-hand experience with one of the biggest learning tools you can think of. We're talking about traveling. She's been to places. She goes along, taking everything into consideration: safety, religion, culture. I don't know what else to say, but she is a whole school about traveling. Her name is Gwendoline Ashu. She is our main passenger on board this radio ride. Let's go back now to the question we have here from uh, Ngang Noela on Facebook. Noela writes, what's your advice to those who are looking forward to traveling, either for fun or greener pastures?
I would say before you go anywhere, you should know that nowhere is like easiest. So let's say if you're leaving Cameroon and going abroad, don't think that abroad is better than Cameroon. Of course, it could be maybe better in the sense of maybe the whole economical situation and the political situation. But if you're going somewhere, you should do your homework and ask yourself the first question, why am I going to this place? If
Mhm,
it's for fun, then maybe you could ask yourself, why am I choosing this country instead of this other country? So why do I go to Italy instead of Austria?
mhm,
And also maybe look at what fits you. What is your personality like? Are you a person who is open? Then maybe you go to a country first which is open, people who are more open, rather than go to maybe a Muslim country where people are more conservative,
mhm,
you know. But if you're traveling for greener pastures, then that's a whole new ball game, you know. Please research and make sure that you know where you're going to, what you're going to be doing where you're going to, and what are the possibilities for you there. Because I know people who just yes, so many lies or fake stories and go somewhere because people say, oh, in this place life is better. Or people have come back home and lied to people and made them make trips that they were not supposed to make because maybe they've promised them some employment possibilities or whatever, marriage possibilities, only for them to get to that place and realize it's not possible. I tell you, everything is online. Most of the trips I make, I've never been to these places, but I get to
mhm,
go there with confidence because I do the work. Go online, search, watch videos of people who've been there, ask questions. There are communities online. You can ask questions. Go on Airbnb, look for locals who offer their apartments or experiences. Write to them, ask questions. Make sure you inform yourself that to the point where you're comfortable enough that you know some degree of information to where
mhm,
you're going to, and then prepare. So make sure you have extra finances in case you have emergencies. You're going abroad. Make sure your health insurance covers if you have any kind of health emergencies, if you get sick. I remember one time when I had flown to Malaysia, and then the same day when I arrived, I was so tired. I went to the mall to eat, and then all of a sudden I was so sick.
mhm,
And I had to call the ambulance to come pick me up. And when I went to the hospital, luckily enough, I had my insurance coverage. Imagine that you were that sick and you didn't have any access to healthcare. That will make your trip horrible because these people don't even speak your language. So
right.
I researched like which hospital would help me, which hospital speaks the language I speak, English, German, French, or whatever. So all those things play a role. But like I said, in whatever travel you want to do, be it for
Mhm,
fun, holidays, for immigration purposes, please inform yourself and do the work. You can also ask people. You know, you can write to me on Instagram, ask me questions. There are so many people out there who are doing the same thing I'm doing.
mhm.
Just ask them.
Right. For any information on traveling, do contact people like Gwen. She will drop her contacts just before we get to our final destination on this radio Right. So, we're told that you're about to visit your 50th country. Is that correct?
I'm excited. Yeah.
Wow. So you've done 49 countries. Okay. So now tell me, which country is this? Do you have it on mind already? Or you are supposed to select the country to go to?
I think it's going to be Andorra, but I'm not sure yet. So I'm
Okay.
still keeping it out.
Okay. So tell us about what influences your decision, on the next country you're going to.
So many things actually. It just depends on accessibility,
Okay.
time. If I have just a week, I can't say I'm going to Australia, for example,
Hmm.
because I know I need time. So time,
Hmm.
how much time I have, how much money I have. If I want to go somewhere which is quite expensive, like I was in Luxembourg, Liechtenstein a couple of weeks
Hmm.
back, and it's quite an expensive place. If I have a budget which will not cover a place like that, I won't go there.
Hmm.
So like time, money,
Hmm.
availability, and sometimes just maybe I see something online which moves me. I could just see a picture of a place. I'm like, where's this place? And it's like, okay, then that's my next destination. So sometimes I'm very spontaneous in the places I go to. And also, like I said, I choose the main country, then I look at surrounding countries. If I could visit those countries and if there's possibility and if I have the resources and the time for it. So time and resources and maybe sometimes spontaneous.
Right. So, just like every musician's dream is to win the Grammys and every filmmaker's dream is to win the Oscars, uh, what is your dream country? Is that one country you have to get to say that you've uh, you've hit the apex of this hobby?
um, every country in the world. But then if you ask me for one, I would say I want to go
Mm.
to Antarctica.
Antarctica. So what is it there you're going to? Why Antarctica?
Because it's that place which is I think it's different from every other place,
Hmm.
you know. I feel like because it's not like typical country you would go to,
Hmm.
and going there also poses quite a challenge. And I love challenges. So
Hmm.
I hope one day I get to visit the penguins.
Tell us, do you intend to transform this? Because there are a lot of ideas these days. People are thinking and thinking. You have this experience. You've traveled all over the world. What are your ambitions? Do you hope to translate this into something? Could be a business venture, could be a traveling agency. I don't know what. It could be a tourism outfit. I really don't know what you're planning. Do you have such plans?
For now, not, but maybe who knows? I'm just open. Like I said, traveling has taught me to be open. And I
Mhm.
never say never. So, like I never said I will never go to a place, I'll never do something, I'll never try something. I'm open to whatever could come. If people have, sometimes people also like suggested ideas for me.
Mhm.
But for me, the most important thing is that it should not take away the fun of traveling.
Mhm.
And I don't want it to become a chore because the moment it becomes that, it takes away that fun for me.
Mhm.
So who knows? I'm actually documenting all the places I've been to
Mhm.
for my family, my future children, for whatever, for my legacy. But for now, I have nothing really special planned. I don't plan to open a YouTube channel.
Okay.
Or I have an Instagram page where I also document most of my travels. I
Mhm.
think when I'm traveling, you would see, like, I'm always there. I share, like, on my stories, some of the highlights and then some of the pictures of where I've been and stuff like that. That's also like
Mhm.
a travel diary for me as well.
Okay.
Yeah, but I have no concrete plans. I help a lot of people travel. I plan lots of trips for people, for my
No
friends and
book.
family.
No
Yeah,
book.
yeah.
Okay.
But
Well,
who knows?
we
Maybe a book. I don't know. I really don't know for now, but I'm
yeah.
open to it.
Well, definitely, because the bunch of experience you have traveling absolutely requires you to do a lot, including writing not just one book about traveling, but scores of books,
Maybe
scores
you
of
help
books.
me with that.
Right. Interesting. Now we're about to get to our final destination. We've been speaking with a traveler par excellence. We did not talk about music. Tell us about some of the music genre which you've come across, and I mean, and I've enjoyed on your trips.
Every kind of music, pop,
Okay.
Afrobeats, whatever. even some Oriental music,
Hmm.
classic music. When I go to Austria, I love to listen to Mozart and all of the rest. Like every kind of music, like every place has its own. And I try to experience everything that exists there, from the food to the people to the music to the clothes to the vibe. People vibe differently.
Right.
So yeah, and it's just that.
Hmm. This is Apex One Radio. This is on board with ERNEST KANJO. We're about to run off on the show with our main guest, who is a traveler par excellence. Gwendoline Ashu is her name. She's on the road. She moves across the world, discovering new places, new people, new languages, new food, new habits, and what have you. The radio journey gets into its last stretch. Don't go away yet.
Yama 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 jange foma. Yama 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 jange foma. Buna 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 iwa taipama. Buna 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 iwa taipama. Mana yama. Buna buna.
All right, so we are just a couple of seconds to our final destination with our main passenger, who is a traveler. Gwendoline Ashu is her name, and she's been with us throughout this radio ride. Welcome back to this last stretch of our journey, Gwendoline.
Thank you.
Right. So, as we leave, what is your last advice to someone who may want to, you know, pick up this habit as well and start moving across the world? Is there anything that can facilitate their movements, especially having the means to do that? You're doing that because you have the means. I love traveling as well, but when a flight to just 2 states away from Ohio has to cost me 800 and something dollars, I just cannot afford that. So, what is it that can help me to accomplish dreams of traveling just like you do?
I would say that traveling must not necessarily be expensive.
Hmm.
And what is traveling actually? It must not be into a far destination. You could just start within your state. I
Hmm.
don't know how much of Ohio you've seen. You've told me about different parts of it. How many of them have you been to? That's where you could start. Take your
Right.
car, take the next bus, and go 30 minutes away.
Hmm.
Spend the day exploring the place. That's traveling. Traveling does not necessarily mean that you have to go somewhere with a flight or stay in a five-star hotel. It
Hmm.
starts small and it must not always be expensive. There are other possibilities. Instead of staying in a hotel, you could stay in an Airbnb apartment. It's
Hmm.
cheaper. Instead of taking the whole, like I told you, when I was in the US, I couldn't fly all the time, so I did some bus trips. It could be a bit longer, but it still gets you to the destination. All it
Hmm.
takes is just a desire to want to do it. And then you could also set aside. You would keep away, like I said, there's so many things that you do where you spend money on. Let's say you spend money buying lots of clothes or something.
Hmm.
You could tell yourself, like, okay, this year I'll buy less clothes and the extra money
And
I'll
travel
put in
more.
traveling.
Hmm.
I could spend, maybe people go to nightclubs and spend hundreds of euros or dollars
Hmm.
buying whiskey and stuff like that. You could forfeit a bottle a night and go somewhere for a weekend. Or you could get a side hustle. I did that as well,
Hmm.
where you could get a job, a side hustle. Maybe you work. There's so many online side hustles people do, or even physical ones for a couple of hours where you just make the money for travel.
Hmm.
It's a thing that you need to desire. But like I always say, once you start traveling and you get to experience it, you will never want to stop.
Hmm.
And for most of it, the world is beautiful, people. Go and say it for yourself. I will not have to tell you my story, but we'll have to talk about it. Be like, do you remember the day we were at this place watching that sunset?
Hmm.
How beautiful it was. Do you remember this other day? So that's just how it is. It is really, truly beautiful. It has changed my life in ways that I cannot even describe to you listening to me. And I could just encourage you to do it. Even in the little capacity you can.
You're encouraged to travel, not just for the sake of it, but at least because, like we've mentioned all along, it's a wonderful experience. Some of the most intelligent people are those who have had to travel across because they've gained knowledge in their process. Gwendoline, want to thank you so much for sharing this experience and this story. This is the very first time we must confess that we're having somebody like you, somebody who has who's almost seen the four corners of the world already. And like I said, yours is a rare experience, a very wonderful one, of course. So thank you once again, and we wish you all the best. Just keep us in the loop, and wherever you are, there are times we could come calling when you are out of your station, just to catch a feel of what you are experiencing wherever you are on holidays. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. If you can follow me on Instagram, and on Instagram, you always know where I am at that point in time in the world. So
Right.
thank you so much also for the invitation. It was a nice ride. It was quite smooth. I was expecting it to be bumpy, but the driver did a good job. So thank you so much.
Right. Just before you go away, could you just now drop your contacts and all your social media handles again?
I'm mostly on Instagram. I have a profile on Facebook, but I don't use it. So you
Okay.
can find me on Instagram at Miss. So it's MS underscore Gwen A. So it's like my name Gwen, Gwen, and then A. So Miss Gwen A.
Mhm.
And you can find me on Instagram. And yeah, that's where I also share most of my travels. You can also see the past trips I've made, most
Mhm.
of them which I've documented. And yeah, you can write to me, DM me, but please just for travel purposes or travel related purposes, okay? And if you respect my private space, I will also respect you. And I'm always willing to talk to people
Mhm.
and looking forward to meeting you.
For travel related purposes, you can contact her. She'll advise you on where to go, how to go about it, and just how to accomplish your dreams of traveling. So, thank you so much again, and you have a fantastic rest of the weekend out there in Germany. By the way, in which city are you in Germany?
I'm currently in Dortmund.
Dortmund. Okay. Well, have a fantastic rest of the Sunday out there, and may God bless you. Destination. It was a wonderful trip with a great traveler who showed us all what she sees as she goes across the world. She's also made us hear what she hears each time she's on the road. Then we've also had a bit or a bite of her experiences as she journeys across the world. And so that is how we've come to our final destination on this great radio journey. Maxwell Ajit was our own locomotion engineer, and he made sure that our 7 years old engine was rattling unstoppably. Gracie Boise was our attendant on this journey. She made sure that our passengers, our other passengers, were properly taken care of. Then Okon Ekweyon was in charge of the tickets, and so he made sure that you could only get on board if you had a ticket to travel with us today on this great radio ride. I was the conductor. My name is ERNEST KANJO. Special thanks to our main passenger, Gwendoline Ashu, great traveler, of course, who has made this trip a fantastic one with us on radio today. I'll be with you again in the next coming days for yet another edition of The Show. And until we meet, it is bye-bye from this end. May God bless you.
Oh, Nini Kafeta.